Perfect, thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. All right, let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Yes. It is truly an honor to stand before you today as a proud board member of the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence at the 13th Annual Advocacy Day. Today, as we gather under the powerful theme of Voices of Change, we are reminded that Advocacy Day is not just about raising our voices. It is about ensuring that our voices are heard in the halls where decisions are being made. It is about ensuring that Voices of Change represents the power we have to shape the future and influence meaningful progress. And today is a call to action. Each of us here represents a story, a struggle, and a fierce determination to support survivors and build a future free of sexual violence. And as if that goal was not challenging enough on its own, we also find ourselves in very challenging times. Funding uncertainties, political pressures, and the growing demands on rape crisis center services are stretching many of us to the limit. Rape crisis centers across the state and the country are being asked to do more with less as we provide critical resources and respond to the complex needs of survivors in a climate that is increasingly hostile towards our work. Yet, despite these obstacles, OAESV has remained persistent in its mission to use an anti-oppression lens to advocate for comprehensive responses and rape crisis center services for survivors and to empower communities to prevent sexual violence. Since its inception, OAESV has been a driving force in creating meaningful change, from providing critical training for advocates to developing essential resources for survivors and advancing key legislative reforms. OAESV's impact has been profound. And we are here today for the 13th Annual Advocacy Day because of the fierce determination of Rosa Beltre and the entire OAESV team. Each of you at OAESV, yes? Each of you at OAESV has strengthened Ohio's network of rape crisis centers, ensuring that survivors across the state receive the compassionate care and support they are owed in the aftermath of a victimization. Your efforts are not only changing lives, they are saving them. And on behalf of the OAESV board, as well as rape crisis centers across the state, thank you, everyone, for your passion, your perseverance, and your determination towards ensuring safer communities. So as we all look toward the day ahead, remember that our voices matter. We carry with us not just the statistics and data, but we carry the stories of the survivors who bravely entrusted us with their lives. We carry the stories of those we've supported in emergency rooms, at police stations, in courtrooms, and in moments of despair. And today we bring those stories directly to our lawmakers. And to our lawmakers, we need your partnership in recognizing the vital role our services play. And we need your commitment to ensuring our programs have the continued resources to meet the needs of survivors. Your support is crucial in making sure no survivor is turned away in the communities that you have been elected to serve. And to the advocates in the room today, our mission is clear. Make them understand the stories you carry with you. The presence of each of you here today speaks volumes. It says that we will not be silent, And it says that we will continue to stand with survivors, challenge harmful systems, and build communities where safety, dignity, and respect are the standard for all survivors. So let us raise our voices louder than ever before, because the stakes are higher than ever before. Today, we are the voice of change, and together we are unstoppable. Thank you. And so now I would like to welcome the Executive Director of OCJS to the podium to present a proclamation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
In the name and by the authority of the state of Ohio, whereas Ohio law enforcement agencies reported 11,465 victims of sexual assault in 2023, and whereas these crimes impacting many Ohioans, including but are not limited to rape, sexual battery, gross sexual imposition, unlawful sexual conduct with a minor, and commercial sexual exploitation of a minor. And whereas, according to Ohio law enforcement agencies, 12% of female victims and 3% of male victims were assaulted by an intimate partner, and 8% of female victims and almost 6% of male victims were assaulted by a stranger. And almost 79% of female victims and 90% of male victims reported the perpetrator was not an intimate partner, but someone else they knew, such as a friend or family member. And whereas, in Ohio, during the 2023-2024 school year, 1 in 10 high school girls and 1 in 20 high school boys reported experiencing sexual assault. And whereas, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 20 boys will be sexually abused before they turn 18 years old, and 1 in 7 adults reported experiences of technology-facilitated sexual violence and abuse before they turned 18. And whereas, for males, people with disabilities, the elderly, and same-sex survivors of sexual assault may be much higher due to underreporting. And whereas, the crime of sexual assault exacts an emotional, physical, psychological, and financial toll on victims and leaves their families, friends, coworkers, and the entire communities feeling less secure. And whereas, this month provides our state an opportunity to bring about awareness, intervention, and prevention strategies that impact all sectors of our population, regardless of age, gender, race, ethnicity, and sexual orientation when addressing the crime of sexual assault in our communities. Now, therefore, we, Mike DeWine and Jim Tressel, Governor and Lieutenant Governor of the state of Ohio, do hereby recognize April 2025 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Morning. My name is Caitlin, and I'm the Senior Director of Prevention and Impact at OAESV. And I would like to introduce you to State Representative Dunny Isaacson. He is currently serving his second term, representing Ohio's 24th House District. The district includes downtown Cincinnati, Fairmount, Price Hill, Westwood, and surrounding neighborhoods. He currently serves in House leadership as Minority Whip. He also serves as Vice Chair on the House Judiciary Committee. Rep. Isaacson sees his role as an elected leader in the state as one of making people's lives better before anything else. He is committed to fighting for a world-class public education for every student, better childcare for parents, smarter housing policy to bring down prices and increase supply, and making sure that seniors have what they need to age with dignity. He is also committed to creating a more just and equitable criminal justice system in Ohio. A through line in his legislative work is Rep. Isaacson's understanding that we must tackle racial and income inequality head-on to make lasting changes. Thank you for joining us, Rep.
Good morning, everyone. It is truly an honor to be here. I want to thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me, and start by just thanking you, not just for being here, but for the work you're doing and for the power and impact that you are bringing to this building at a time when we need it the most. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I do want to try and give you a sense of how to advocate effectively here while you're here, my thoughts on sort of, what you can do and where we go from here, and to sort of try and be a partner and an ally in that way. So to start, I just want to give you some background on the approach I bring to this work. So after law school, I decided instead of practicing law, I was going to go back to what I had been doing in some form or fashion for the decade prior, which is community organizing. And so I started a community organization down in Cincinnati based on a pretty simple idea, that the people who live the issues every day are experts. We call them everyday experts. And that the everyday experts need to have a seat at the table where decisions are made with the people influencing and making those decisions. And what you learn when you do community organizing, particularly the kind I was doing, is that elected officials matter. They matter tremendously. They make our laws, but there's other people in power, right? School superintendents and hospital CEOs, university presidents, and that they need to be in the room with the everyday experts too. So I spent 7 years before this job, not only organizing everyday experts, but making sure that they were sitting at tables, having those discussions and sharing, and this is the important part, not just their experiences, not just their stories or what happened to them, not just feedback on someone else's concept, but they were there, and the work continues. I don't run it anymore, but the work continues. They are there, they are at those tables because they are experts, and experts need to be asked their ideas. Because once you've gone through something, once you've lived it, you know what's going to make a difference. And so I come to this work with a profound respect for the value of everyday expertise and for a belief that it should inform every single thing we do. And that if we make a law without it, that law is not going to work as intended. So I want to start there because I want to just emphasize how this room could be more important than a year's worth of reports and study and research, because you are the experts, or you bring with you the stories and the ideas of the experts, and you are here to convey and advocate on their behalf. So that matters, this matters, and what you're doing matters. And so I want to just maybe talk a little how to bring that everyday expertise. Right? So the work gave me a sense that actually when you really talk to people, when you listen to survivors, when you listen to kids who are getting bullied in school, when you listen to seniors who are struggling to ride the bus, and you ask them their ideas, the things they say are not obviously partisan. Right? Is it partisan to make sure that freshmen in high school have seniors who are their allies and their mentors when they start so that they get bullied less, or that they have an after-school video game club? Is that a Republican idea or a Democratic idea? Making it so that if you experience sexual violence as a child, that you can access those records and pursue that case when you're ready as an adult. Is that a partisan idea? I don't know how you put that in a partisan lane. And so the work is what made me want to run for office, because I thought even in this environment, even in a hyper-partisan place like the Ohio legislature, surely if we bring the creative ideas of the everyday experts, we can make some progress, because these ideas are not obviously partisan. And you know what? I have to say, a little more than 2 years in, I still think that's basically right, and have made real progress on some of those issues. It's just harder and takes longer. And so as you approach this work, just it doesn't have to be partisan. In fact, in this environment, it can't be partisan and shouldn't be. And so it starts with a personal story. It starts with the hook, right? That's what we say in organizing, lead with your personal story. But you also need a relationship, because it's not just the message, it's can the message be received? And so having a relationship with your elected official, having a relationship with their staff, taking the time to build it over weeks, over months, over years really does matter, and will make, it makes it so that they can hear the message a little differently. And some of that, and I'm saying this to you as much as I say it to myself every morning, is to have the discipline to put that relationship first and foremost so that you can achieve your goals, which sometimes means not calling them out on other things you disagree with them on, or not making it personal, or not, being hurt in other ways, or not, kind of expressing maybe anger or frustration or writing people off. If our job is to advocate for survivors, if our job is to make a better future for Ohio, if our job is to put other people's lives before our own, then part of our job is doing what it takes to get the work done, and that means building relationships with people we disagree with, and having the trusting relationships so that your story and what you're advocating for can be heard. The last little sort of nugget that I try and really push with people is I'm a Democrat. I don't know if that was clear, and so I'm in the minority party here. Nothing happens legislatively without a Republican. That's just how it is. They're in charge. I'm sure it's the same in New York with Democrats or Connecticut. That's just the reality. So I need to build relationships across the aisle. That's my job, so that we can work together on important issues. I think the Judiciary Committee, where I'm the ranking member, is a great example of this. We call it the Lawyer Committee, right? The Lawyer Committee, sometimes it's partisan, usually it's not. It doesn't have to be, and we have great relationships. But when you come to advocate, you can do the work of building relationships across the aisle with other advocates, with other survivors, with other allies. And then when you come to us, instead of meeting with us one-on-one, you can say, hey, I'm going to use Southwest Ohio examples because I'm from Cincinnati. I'm from Butler County and I'm from Hamilton County. Can the two of you, as representatives of these two counties, can you meet with us together? Because we want to share our stories, we want to advocate collectively. Because if you meet with me one-on-one after the meeting, I'm then going to have to find someone to work with, right? I can't do it on my own. So if you come in on the front end, and then I can then follow up on that meeting and be like, wow, that was powerful, right? So are we going to do this? Are you in? And then you're passing the baton to me. This is a partnership. You're doing some of the advocacy on the front end, and then you're trusting me that I'm going to keep pushing that legislatively. So I wanted this to, I told the organizers I was going to try and be a little more useful than inspirational. So I hope that, on a windy, stormy Thursday morning, as you're getting ready to advocate, that some of this is useful. And I want to end by noting what I think is sort of front and center the second any of us open our phones or turn on the TVs or, engage with the world at the moment, that it is a scary time. I don't care what end of the political spectrum you are or where you're coming from. These are tumultuous and uncertain, and for some, deeply terrifying times to live in and days in our country and in our state. And so the question that I get all the time is, well, what do I do? What do we do? I think the answer very clearly is we do things like this. Is that the answer to what do we do in times like these is we make sure that we are not giving up on our principles, that we are not giving up on building a better future. And so we're going to show up at the State House. We're going to talk to our elected officials. We're not going to let them work and operate without accountability, without building relationships with us, without demanding change. So this is the work that responds to the moment. Your work gives us purpose, and I hope gives you some purpose too, because we don't make change without you. And we've got a lot of change to make. We are almost dead last in the country when it comes to the statute of limitations for victims of child rape. What are we doing? And I have to believe that that's because of ignorance, not because of hate or cynicism. And so if ignorance is the problem, then we can educate and advocate our way to making progress. And so that's the work you all are doing. I hope you consider me a partner and an ally in that work. I hope you consider our caucus partners and allies in that work, because we have a lot of work to do, but this is what we should be doing. This is what we have to be doing. You are the everyday experts. So thank you for being here. Thank you for pushing us. Please continue to do so. While I wasn't here to inspire you, you are inspiring me. So I hope this has been helpful, and thank you for being here today. And I really appreciate you inviting me to speak.
Thank you, Representative Isaacson. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Cass-Colvin. I'm the Director of Coordinated Community Responses at OAESV. Since 2022, our team has been working with survivors across Ohio on a storytelling project. 9 survivors from across the state worked with Story Center and OAESV to each develop a short story telling a part of their story that they wanted to share for prevention, awareness, and their own healing. And they created some beautiful videos. We are thrilled to have one of the amazing storytelling project participants here to share with you today, Leanna. Not only did Leanna work to develop a transformational storytelling video, she also used her voice to advocate in the Ohio legislature last year to pass Senate Bill 109. This bill made significant changes to the State Medical Board of Ohio's handling of sexual misconduct reports and cases, with the goal of increasing accountability and transparency in the system for survivors. Leanna's voice was instrumental in the advocacy for this legislation and was part of a much larger advocacy effort on her part to seek accountability not just for herself, but for all survivors who come into contact with this system. We are here today to acknowledge and honor the advocacy she engaged in. Using her voice for change at critical moments led to long-lasting policy change. On behalf of OAESV, we thank you for being a voice for change, Leanna. So I am honored to introduce Leanna Rushello to you this morning. In her own words, Leanna is a mom, small business owner, nonprofit founder, and longtime activist dedicated to making the world more inclusive and just. As a founder of Opportunities Unleashed, she has worked tirelessly to create job training opportunities for individuals with disabilities while also running a successful pet care business. Her advocacy for sexual assault survivors has played a key role in legislative change, including the passage of Senate Bill 109 in Ohio. Passionate, driven, and deeply committed to her work, Leanna believes in using her voice to challenge societal norms and fight for those who need it most. And if you ask her wife, she's not just a powerhouse, she's a smoking hot, sexy babe.
Good morning, everyone. First, I want to start out by saying my wife was right. I am a smoking hot, sexy babe. I also want to take the opportunity to thank OAESV, specifically Nicole, Shelby, Emily, and Ngazi. The amount of emails I sent these humans is embarrassing. but yet they would always respond. They were always encouraging, and they were always kind. I tried so many different things to help myself in my healing journey, but very few were successful in helping or teaching me something. I got both from OAESV. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you for providing a space and a platform for people like me, and to find a community that I so desperately needed, and the voice that I thought I had lost. Chris Graham is also, I think he's here today, and I couldn't have been successful in my legislation journey without him. If you don't know him, go meet him. He knows a lot about navigating the system inside this building. He's a phenomenal advocate, a kind human, and a genuine hell of a guy. I cannot share my story without honoring those who have lived it with me. My mom, who once told me, I can stay a victim or I can remember who the fuck I am and put my cape back on. My wife, the mother of our babies, who would have built a village with her bare hands if she thought it could have helped me. She tried to absorb a lot of the anguish that I felt, and may have succeeded in some, but always sat with me, however ugly, however dark and depressed, she sat with me. Thank you. To my dear friend Todd, who is probably the smartest human I know, still finds a way to make me feel smarter when I speak with him. And he also lets me call him Tater Todd. If you don't have a Todd, I highly recommend you get one. If you don't, you can always borrow mine. Behind every strong person is a story that gave them no choice. My story, like so many other survivors, is a story without justice. It begins here with a trigger warning. In this speech, I share details of a survivor's journey, not about the assault itself, but the journey after the assault may still trigger some. So I'm going to take a pause while you check in with your body and decide whether or not you would like to stay or leave. My name is Leanna Rushlow, and on August 17th, 2021, I was sexually assaulted by a massage therapist, Daniel Scharfel, at the Grand Resort Hotel and Spa in Warren, Ohio. I stand before you today as an advocate, but before that, I was a victim. I never imagined I would be here speaking into microphones, sitting in government chambers, helping to pass legislation. That was never supposed to be my story. My story was supposed to be one of justice, one where the bad guy gets locked up and truth prevails. But instead, it became a story of betrayal by a system that was never designed with survivors in mind. Why is it that one of the most traumatic things that someone can go through is also the hardest to prove? I believed in a system that didn't believe me. It has been 1,325 days since I reported my assault. 12 more victims came forward, and he still works there. I thought I did everything I was supposed to do. I told everyone I could think of. I told managers, the police, the medical board, the governor, state representatives, the news, and 5 million people on the internet. I laid my entire life bare in the pursuit of justice, only to be met with silence. It took me a year and a favor from a friend to even get a detective to call me back. I was met with dismissal. Nothing could have happened because there was no disruption in service. It took me years to forgive myself, to understand that I couldn't just get up. And even longer to believe my therapist when she told me that the freeze response is the most common response in sexual violence. Or I was met with a classic, it's a he said, she said case. Fuck that one. Why would I put myself through this if I weren't telling the truth? You think? And then somewhere in the middle of the endless reporting, the hearings, the attorneys, and the failures, I stopped trying to convince the world that this terrible thing happened to me. I just started speaking the truth because it did happen. But the realization came at a cost. I have lost pieces of myself along the way, moments with my children I can never get back. I have grieved so much grief, I became sick of the grief. I've laid awake at night longing for a life that no longer exists, because there is everything that was before, and there is everything that is after. And nothing will ever be the same. I remember sitting on a beach watching my daughter play. She ran back and forth from her sandcastle to the waves, so joyful, so free. And in an instant, my joy morphed into fear as a troubling question surfaced. How do I protect her when I couldn't even protect myself? I told my therapist this once. I just keep imagining if this were my daughter. And my therapist said something that changed everything. How hard would you fight if this was your daughter? That landed hard. All at once, I ripped the tape off my mouth. I threw the heaviness off and I drew my sword. I transformed from victim to survivor. And I realized that if justice would not be a part of my healing journey, then advocacy would be. If the system would not make me whole, then I would find wholeness in changing the system itself. I chose to heal myself through advocacy. That is why SB 109 mattered so much to me. Because of this law, survivors will no longer be left in the dark during medical board investigations. The system that once re-traumatized me with its silence will now be forced to communicate, to inform, to give survivors the dignity they deserve. The bill also implements a suspension system while an offender is under investigation. It makes failing to report a felony. It forces the medical board and the police to talk to each other. And because of additional language that was added, no unconscious patient will be subjected to vaginal exams without consent. Yes, because that wasn't already a law. These changes may seem small to some, but to survivors, they are life-changing. Because when the next survivor stands in my shoes, they won't be left as broken as I was. They won't be left as alone. To every survivor that is here today, I see you. I believe you. I give you permission to speak, to yell your truth, to take up space, and if the world won't listen, tell them louder. Because you are not just a victim, you are a survivor. Your voice has power, and I promise you, I won't let them forget us. I give you permission to stop trying to cover up your scars, but instead wear them like a badge of honor. I give you permission to, as Senator Cory Booker put 2 days ago, let's get into some good trouble. So how do you heal without justice, you ask? We change the fucking system.
Good morning, everyone. I expect a slightly more enthusiastic response. Good morning, everyone. It is very inspiring and fulfilling for me to see so many advocates gathered here today to address the critical issue of sexual violence in Ohio. My name is Emily Gamar, and I serve as the Director of Public Policy at OAESV. Many of you have received many emails from me in the past week. Thank you for being here today. To start, I'd like to ask everyone who provides services at a rape crisis center to raise your hand. Wow. Next, let's extend this to anyone who provides any services to survivors of sexual assault, whether at our RCC or not. Raise your hand, please. A lot of us. For all of the advocates, nurses, social workers, attorneys, and others who are working tirelessly around the clock to support our communities, let's give you a round of applause. Thank you all for being here. At the end of last year, OAESV surveyed Ohio's 36 rape crisis centers to assess the current state of sexual violence prevention and response. While the results weren't exactly surprising, they reinforced a troubling reality. Rape crisis centers are not only serving more survivors year to year, they are also faced with an increasingly number of complex cases. These are needs for housing, counseling, benefits, legal services, entry or re-entry into the workforce, and so much more to mitigate the impacts of trauma on a survivor's life. For those of you who don't know, rape crisis advocates are on call 24/7 to provide immediate support to survivors in hospitals across the state. When a survivor seeks medical treatment following an assault, these advocates are there to offer direct care, explain crime victims' rights, and connect survivors to long-term services. These centers are the only organizations in Ohio providing this kind of 24/7 hospital response to sexual assault survivors, and it bridges the gap between survivors, law enforcement, prosecution, and many other services at the local level. In addition, our local hotlines, also available 24/7, serve as a vital lifeline for Ohioans in crisis. Last year alone, these hotlines reached over 40,000 survivors of sexual violence in Ohio. As many of you know, I'm down here quite a bit at the Statehouse, and I'm asked on almost a weekly basis, 40,000 people, that's a lot of people. Does that mean that more sexual violence is occurring in the state? Not necessarily. It does mean, what we know for sure, is that the longer our services are established in a local area, the more the community trusts our services. They come in and seek services again if they need to over the course of their life. They refer family, friends, loved ones, neighbors, coworkers to those services when they need it. And so that really speaks to the value of these services being maintained and stabilized in a community over a long period of time. But the services don't stop at hotlines and hospital response. These centers provide support through legal advocacy, accompaniment to law enforcement and court proceedings, the crime victims' rights education, and navigating a kaleidoscope of local resources. Many centers also provide counseling, support groups, housing assistance, and other specialized services. I'd like to highlight the impact these services made in just one average week last year. 806 survivors called local and state sexual violence helplines for support from a trained crisis advocate. Nearly 1,600 survivors accessed services at a rape crisis center. That's an average of 44 clients a day per rape crisis center. Imagine if you had nearly 50 people coming into your door seeking new services every day. That is astounding. 230 survivors received direct care from advocates and our wonderful forensic nurses and local emergency departments. And Rape Crisis Center advocates provided 500 hours of legal advocacy in just one average week. For those of you who don't know, there are only 168 hours in a week. So that really speaks to how much time we are spending in these systems with survivors, answering those questions that nobody else is equipped or available to answer, to sit with someone, to hold space for them and their traumatic experience. Despite this tremendous work being done, these essential services face ongoing threats due to inadequate funding. That's part of why we're here today, to advocate for the continued funding of sexual assault services at the state level. We know that when survivors have access to timely, trauma-informed care, they are more likely to report crimes, pursue justice, and stay engaged with resources to help them in their healing journey. But for this to happen, these services must remain available, accessible, and fully equipped to meet the unique needs of each survivor. We urge you to stand with us today to ensure that Ohio's sexual assault services are fully funded and supported in this state budget. By doing so, you will not only assist survivors, but you will create a safer and more just Ohio for everyone. Thank you for your time and your commitment to building an Ohio where all individuals are treated with dignity, respect, and the promise of justice in the aftermath of trauma. Next, I am very proud and honored to welcome one of the Rape Crisis Program Directors, Molly McMath with Compass, to share more with you about the impact of our Rape Crisis Center services in the state and state funding. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to be here with you at Advocacy Day. And thank you to our Alliance staff for putting this all together and inviting me here today. Compass is the Rape Crisis Center that serves Tuscarawas, Carroll, and Stark counties. And today we're here to really focus on funding and the services that that funding provides to survivors of sexual violence. And that should be the focus. But for me, my mind keeps going back to June 21st, 2004, 21 years ago. A much younger me walked in to the Compass office for the very first time to start my job as the executive director. At that time, our location was undisclosed, so I met the board president in the parking lot of a church. And she handed me the keys and said, "Good luck." And I said, "Thanks, I got this. Where do I go?" And she said, "Just in the front doors." Right, in the church? You see, the Compass office at that time was in the basement of a small church in an old Sunday school room. That was our office. And I had 3 staff at the time, and the 4 of us shared that little room. Now, let me tell you, I fully believe that the only reason Compass survived in those first years was because of the support of that church and that congregation. So I thank them for allowing us to use that small little Sunday school room. But it was so small, we didn't even have space for this. And so we had to go across the hall to the next Sunday school room, where we would sit at a wooden table on those little wooden chairs, if you remember, and that's where we would meet with our survivors. At that time, we only served Tuscarawas and Carroll counties, and there was 4 of us. And the 4 of us worked our 40-hour shifts in the office, and then we covered the hotline in the evenings and weekends. The very first time I went to do payroll, I met with one of the board members, and they were going to show me how to access the account and do payroll. And I remember they pulled it up, and I looked, and I said, "Is there another account somewhere? Like, do we have money somewhere else?" And she said, "No, why?" Like, is there even enough money to do payroll out of this account? But yeah, that's what I walked into. And I'm not gonna lie, those first few years were very difficult. We did not have the access to the unrestricted dollars that we needed to cover the administrative and overhead costs. But my 3 staff were dedicated, and they did the best they could with the resources we had. That first year, Compass served 389 people through direct services and our prevention. In 2006, something changed for us, and we had a partnership with Goodwill Industries of Greater Cleveland and East Central Ohio. Compass would retain their own 501c3, but as a subsidiary, Goodwill provided unrestricted funds and administrative support. This may seem like an odd partnership, but our CEO at the time was a visionary. And he believed that Goodwill changes lives and saw that Compass does the same thing with rape crisis services. So to him, it made sense. And for the next few years, this gave us the stability and a chance to focus on our mission and provide services to our community. But over time, this also led us to see that there was a greater need for our services. We were not meeting the needs of our community. One prevention educator for 2 counties is not enough. One advocate for 2 counties is not enough. In 2013, we started understanding that there would now be a new line item in the state budget, and that we were going to get a new source of funding. And that is what became known as the Rape Crisis Fund. And guess what was one of the first things we did? We got a new office. We moved to a real office building with multiple rooms. And for the first time, survivors could come to a space that was created just for them. In the coming years, we would assume the rape crisis services in Stark County, and we opened a second office in Canton. And our services began to grow. And it was because of that additional funding that we were able to start looking at what did the community really need. So it's been over 10 years now since the Rape Crisis Fund passed. So what does Compass look like today? Well, instead of 1 prevention educator, we have a team of 3 educators and a supervisor. They are almost in every school district in our 3 counties, teaching our young people about topics such as healthy and safe relationships, consent, communication, setting boundaries. Our 1 advocate has grown to 2 advocates, 2 campus advocates, and 5 on-call advocates, all overseen by a supervisor. We have 3 satellite offices on campuses at our local universities where we can reach out to our young adults now. Our advocates are involved with the courts. We help with civil protection orders. We are members of the MDTs with our child advocacy centers. We offer free trauma counseling to all those impacted by sexual violence. And in February of this year, with the help of the Rape Crisis Funds, we have merged rape crisis services with the Alliance Rape Crisis Program. Compass just signed a lease for an office in Alliance and has hired an advocate that will coordinate services in this community. And in the past year, in 2024, we served just under 9,000 people. Funding makes a difference. So survivors deserve to have access to quality, comprehensive services. Our children, teens, and young adults need prevention education. To our lawmakers today, please know that the rape crisis funding line item is necessary, but it goes 1 step further. This funding helps to change lives for the good. So let's all do what we do best. Let's go advocate, let's go educate, and let's help change some lives. Thank you.
Good morning. I promise I won't make you do that again. My name is Chandra Ingram, and I'm the Vice President of Operations at the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence. Our next speaker is a civic leader, a storyteller, and an advocate whose work invites us to lead with empathy and build communities where everyone belongs. Sophia Pfiffner is the president and CEO of the Columbus Metropolitan Club and has directed more than $100 million to social impact through her career in philanthropy, public policy, and corporate affairs. Her personal story as a survivor of sexual assault has fueled her passion and connection, and her work has been featured in Times, Today.com, and Forbes. She also teaches at the Ohio State University's John Glenn College of Public Affairs. Please join me in welcoming Sophia Pfiffner to the stage.
I'm so honored to be in this room with all of you. Thank you for showing up today. It's been a really rough couple of months, and I'm so glad to be in this moment with you. And I want to thank OAESV for inviting me. As a longtime volunteer and supporter of this organization's work, it really is an organization that is transforming lives in so many ways. And for that, it definitely transformed mine. So with that, I'm going to move this bench so I can get a little closer. Sorry, Rosa. Okay. All right. Now, we all have heard a lot of stories, and today I want to share a little bit of mine. My senior year of high school, I was attending a house party, and I drank a lot. So much that I found myself passed out in a basement. And I only woke up to someone that I did not know assaulting me. You know, I walked into that home believing in humanity and the goodness of my community and left completely alone, violated, and completely engulfed with terror. You know, and afterwards, I did everything that I was supposed to do. I got a rape kit. I filed a report with the police. I followed the rules. And still, after taking a polygraph test, a female state trooper told me that I wasn't raped. She told me that I lied, and she told me that the stranger waking up next to me and on top of me so I couldn't feel my own body, well, that was normal. That happened to her multiple times in college. I was 17. That moment didn't just break something in me. It rewrote something. It rewrote my relationship with trust, with justice, and what courage really means. You know, in that moment, I didn't need a lecture. Honestly, I didn't need policy. I didn't need a hero with a big cape to swoop me up and protected me. I just needed someone to believe me. I needed a neighbor. Now, we live in a country with 330 million people, and yet 1 in 2 Americans feel alone. We're more digitally connected than ever. We're all, well, I'm doom scrolling a lot, but we're all scrolling on social media, but social isolation is engulfing us. And we're not just divided politically, we're divided spiritually, we're divided economically, emotionally, and our inboxes. Just look at where you go to get your hair done. Where do you go to church or your synagogue or your mosque? Look at our kitchen tables. But there's a deeper issue here, even more than the division that we're all experiencing. And that deeper issue is that we've built this cultural mythology around heroism. We glorify the dramatic, the bold, the loud, the televised, the elite. We praise Melinda Gates and Jeff Bezos for their big P philanthropic donations to save the world. We celebrate political leaders that have clapbacks and deliver divisive messages, we lift them up. We reward the extraordinary instead of the ordinary. And I argue that we've forgotten how to just acknowledge and value the daily, the quiet, and the local. And more importantly, we forget to look in the mirror and say, why am I waiting for someone else to fix these problems when I have the power to make a difference? We've been sold a narrow script. Courage has to be bold. Leadership requires a title. You must be a CEO if you're really going to make an impact. That generosity comes with a massive tax deduction and a massive celebration over your big donation to a nonprofit organization. I've been part of that system, and I'm here to tell you that it's costing us something really important. And in fact, that system made me overlook the quiet helpers and the everyday advocates, the ones that show up when no one's watching. It made me overlook my own voice. When I think of those quiet neighbors, I think about my family story. I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents immigrated from Jamaica to Pickerington, Ohio in the 1980s. And Pickerington, Ohio in the 1980s was more cornfields than houses. And in my neighborhood, I like to say that I was Appalachia adjacent because I went to church in Lancaster. The woman across the street was from West Virginia. My best friend's family was from Kentucky. But we had neighbors. We had advocates and quiet believers. My parents hosted missionary families from all over the world in our house on a regular basis. When you grow up in a family, I have 21 aunts and uncles. Not everyone has the capacity to support their livelihoods, or just as all human beings, we all go through things. So we hosted family members for years, sometimes in months on end. My West Virginia neighbor, she made me cookies and warm bread when my parents had to run errands. And these are quiet moments, but really what they taught me was the power of empathy, kindness, the importance of compassion. They're the quiet advocates. Many of you in this room are those quiet advocates. Some of you are loud advocates, and I'm here for it. But many of you are those quiet advocates who are doing the work every single day without thanks, because you know how critical it is for your community. You're holding space for grief. You're translating forms. You're raising your voice at the Statehouse today. But the myth is that people tell us that it's not enough, that it only counts if you have national TV, if you have 1 million likes on social media. We downplay what we do. I'm sure if I had a conversation with many of you in the room, if I asked you what you do, no one would say, oh, I change lives. I save people every single day. You'd go, oh, well, I help people with blah, blah, blah. You're saving lives. And for others who perhaps aren't in this room, they're still trying to figure it out. I can't tell you, I lead an organization focused on community conversations. And every day I meet Central Ohioans who say, I just really want to get connected. I want to show up for my community. Because they might think that voting is the whole story and empathy is the extra credit. They keep waiting for someone else to knock, to organize, and to lead. And while they wait, and while we minimize, harm grows and hope shrinks. Hope shrinks. And let me tell you what hope shrinking looks like. Hope shrinking means that our civic participation has dropped by 30% in the last 50 years. Hope shrinking means that we are electing predators to our highest office. Hope shrinking means that survivors are not believed even when they have the entire country, the entire world celebrating them for their athletic skills and competitions. That's what hope shrinking looks like. Hope shrinking looks like the nonprofit sector has not grown from 2% of our GDP in years. Hope shrinking looks like only 2% of philanthropic donations supporting women and children. And you know what that means? That means survivors. That means organizations like the organizations in this room. That's what hope shrinking looks like. We have lived our lives disconnected, alienated, and isolated. But here's the weird contradiction. Americans actually trust their neighbors. They trust you. They trust you more than they trust any corporation, any elected official, or religious institution. So we have trust. And some of us are putting it to work, but far too many of us are still waiting. We're second guessing our actions. And we all knew how to neighbor when we were kids, right? I mean, some of us grew up in more urban settings or rural communities, but we all knew how to neighbor. We all had at least one friend, one person who demonstrated some level of kindness, whether that be when you're a very young child or when you're entering into your young adulthood. There had to be one person who showed you some level of kindness, of empathy. The invitation is still there to return, to reconnect, and to begin again. So here's what I've learned. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be able to accomplish some of the things that I've accomplished professionally. As a survivor of rape, as a child, it shakes you. For nearly 15 years, I lived in a cage where I didn't tell anybody else. It's like, well, if I reported, if I did everything right and I'm still not believed, why should I say anything more? So I spent nearly 15 years working in community, but not advocating for myself. I spent 15 years working on Capitol Hill, listening to constituents, advocating for issues like financial literacy, about character education, about state funding programs, Obamacare, but I never thought that it would be important to raise my own voice. In fact, I even competed in pageants. That's honestly where I learned most of my advocacy skills, how to meet an elected official and advocate on an issue's behalf and say, this is why you should invest in kids, how to speak in front of a large audience and communicate, here's why this issue is so critical. For 2 decades, I worked at the intersection of community and policy, from Capitol Hill to Central Ohio, helping individuals raise issues that have grave importance to their communities, whether it be parks or healthcare, right? I thought that everyone around me, perhaps, those were the heroes, not me. Those are the people that are doing cool things. Those are the people that are doing great work. I'm gonna do whatever I can to support them. But we don't need more heroes. We need better neighbors. And not the casserole kind of neighbors, although casseroles still count. I'm really just talking about the skills of humanity, right? The kind who shows up, who listens longer than is comfortable. The time that asks questions before casting judgment. That holds a hand instead of holding grudges. Those are the types of neighbors that we need, because courage isn't something that you have, it's something that you choose again and again. In fact, there's a neuroscientist, Abigail Marsh, who studied people, and specifically heroes, and how they ran towards danger, donating kidneys to strangers or pulling people from burning cars. And what she found was not that they were fearless. They had fear. They were just more empathetic. That there's this part of your brain that recognizes distress, and it just lit up more than average people in these individuals. And that they didn't act because they were brave, but because they cared for others. They had compassion, and compassion spreads. There's an individual, Christopher Cuck, who wrote The Compassionate Achiever, and he realized that people who witness compassion are 3 times more likely to act compassionately themselves. It spreads like wildfire. So I am not a hero, but I will tell you, there is a moment when that part of my brain lit up, and I realized that I needed to start utilizing my own voice. for issues that really mattered to me. And that moment was the birth of my first child. I'll never forget it. Working in, having a background in politics, I don't know, things just like I count things in election cycles. But it was November of 2016. And I started my professional career working for Senator Voinovich, a Republican. And I really struggled with that election cycle, just like many individuals. But I struggled with it because I was really disappointed that the rhetoric around immigration, the rhetoric around believing survivors, the rhetoric around supporting women, I just couldn't believe, I was devastated. Devastated is probably too light of a word. So when my daughter Caroline was born on November 4th, 2016, something in me snapped. I took her home from the hospital the day after the election, and I remember holding her in her light yellow nursery. And I'd like to say this was this precious moment where I held it all together, but I was uncontrollably sobbing. Uncontrollably, like ugly face, tears, snot, the whole thing. And I made Caroline a promise that day. I told her that no matter what, I was going to use my voice, not to advocate for others, but to advocate for issues that really matter to me, to start to tell my story, to start to speak up for women. That's the promise that I made her. And then my mother walked in and she said, Sophia, why are you crying? Your body's gonna go back to normal. I was like, oh my gosh, Mom, like why on earth do you think this is about my body? I got, seriously? She really did say that. She we're two different human beings. But I made a promise to her. And again, I am not a hero. I am one woman who is bound and determined to do everything I can to make sure that the world is just a little bit better for now my daughter Caroline and also Hannah. So how do we do this? We start by redefining what courage looks like. That's not a cape or being the person at the podium. It's presence. It's neighboring. It's not waiting for the perfect. It's being the person that says, I see you, I'll stay, and I care for you. That's what it's about. And that's what democracy requires of us right now. So we begin again, right here, today. We start by asking, what is my piece in this community? Who haven't I checked up on? And where can I offer care that's consistent and not conditional? This isn't about saving the whole world, right? I think oftentimes people, if you're myself included, if you read the news, whether that be what's happening here at our state house, to what's happening in your local communities, to what's happening in our country or internationally, regardless of your political background, it is overwhelming. This isn't about saving the world. This is about showing up for the world around you. It's about showing up for the world around us. And whether it's your block, your school, at work, it's simply being present with the people who matter most. For those who are already showing up, like many of you, this isn't about doing more either. That's not my message. It's knowing that what you are doing is absolutely enough. It's knowing that your actions really matter, and to keep going, to keep choosing connection, and to keep believing in others. Every act of neighboring, no matter how small, is a bigger part of a wave of change. And we need all of those actions. So next time you think, someone should be doing, or I could be doing, right? Know that for those who are thinking, someone should be doing, that is you. You can be doing. And for those who are wondering, I should be doing, like you're doing it already. Keep going. We don't need more heroes. We just need better neighbors. The courage to be a neighbor isn't about capes and crashing into burning buildings, although that's really cool. And if you're my daughter, Hannah, she's like all for it. It's about showing up, listening deeply, and choosing connection when it matters most. So I invite all of you to continue keeping your porch light on, not just for the people you already know, but keeping your porch light on to make sure that everyone, even that 17-year-old girl, knows that there are people in the world who believe her, who see her and hear her words, because that's how you make sure that no one is ever alone. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Ucker-Lauderman. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer at OAESV. OAESV is pleased to announce one of our 2025 recipients of the National Visionary Voice Awards. Each April, the National Sexual Violence Resource Center offers the Visionary Voice Awards to recognize the creativity and hard work of individuals around the country who have demonstrated outstanding work to end sexual violence. Each year, state, territory, and tribal coalitions select an outstanding individual to nominate for the awards. This year, OAESV nominated one outstanding visionary voice in our state legislature. So I would like to start by welcoming Senator Nathan Manning. Senator Nathan Manning is serving his second term in the Ohio Senate, representing the people of the 13th Senate District, which includes all of Lorain County and portions of Huron County. He was elected to the Senate after serving 2 terms in the Ohio House of Representatives. He also previously served as the prosecutor for the city of North Ridgeville and currently works as a partner at the law firm Manning Law, LLC. Senator Manning has spent his time in the legislature focused on several substantial issues that are meaningful to his constituents. During the last General Assembly, he championed multiple pieces of bipartisan legislation to protect the rights of the most vulnerable Ohioans, 2 of which we want to uplift today. Senate Bill 100 holds people who use electronic tracking devices for stalking purposes accountable for their actions and protects individuals from being unknowingly tracked. Senator Manning also carried anti-SLAPP legislation, which creates a judicial process to prevent meritless lawsuits that attempt to intimidate individuals from exercising their constitutional rights, protecting freedom of expression for Ohioans. OAESV thanks Senator Manning for his leadership and partnership to address sexual violence in Ohio. So please join me in welcoming Senator Manning.
Why, thank you so much. What a turnout. I certainly feel very honored. It's a true blessing to be awarded this, but I never feel like I earned it. My job as a judiciary chair, as a state senator, is to listen to our constituents, to listen to our experts, people like all of you that have gone through something like this or have worked in this field for a number of years. Yeah, I do have a criminal justice background. It's a passion of mine to try to help victims. And I certainly have carried a lot of bills and worked on a lot of bills in that regard. But there's no way I could have done this without groups like this to help me, kind of shepherd these through. Because a lot of bills don't pass, quite frankly, and sometimes it's easy to pass one chamber. Senate Bill 100 is a great example of that. I certainly want to thank my joint sponsor, Leader Antonio. I think she's won this award in the past. She was a great help in this, and we had to carry it 2 General Assemblies to get this passed, but we were able to get it done. Quite frankly, when Lena Lai from up in Cleveland, she's a news reporter, brought this to me, I thought, she's wrong. This is definitely illegal. Tracking somebody like this is absolutely illegal under the stalking statute. But then after looking into it, researching and talking to the county prosecutors, realized that this is a loophole in the law, and it was something very important to get through to help those individuals. Also want to thank Carmel Triplett, who was the victim that Lena Lai was reporting on. She came down to testify and really helped shepherd this bill through. I also want to thank something unique about this bill. I got to work with Lexi Davis, with Brendan Embry, with Lindsay and Brady that are currently in my office. Legislative aides, they do a lot of work and don't get a lot of credit. So I was able to work with 4 different legislative aides through this process, and they're a huge help. I also want to thank Senator Patton. He carried the companion legislation. It's nice to have both reps and senators work on the same bills to get something through. And then on the anti-SLAPP statute, this is a big, it's been around for a few years. Speaker Huffman actually carried it first. It did not pass. I joint sponsored with Senator Gavarone, and we were able to get across the finish line. That was not an easy lift, but this is going to ensure that victims are not going to be sued and silenced, because they don't have the means to defend themselves. So it's really a great bill to help victims out there of multiple offenses. But I'll quit rambling, but I really am truly honored. Thank you so much for this honor. It really is an honor, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and help victims in the future. Thank you.
All right, we are nearing the end of our morning session. Before many of you will go forth and meet with your elected officials, I wanted to take a moment to remind everyone that most of you should have checked in at registration and gotten your folders with your information about the remainder of the day. You will have these lovely fact sheets in your folders that talk about the issues we are covering today. One is the Rape Crisis Center's line item in the state budget, and another is a piece of substantive legislation, House Bill 172, talking about retaining mental health care services for minors in Ohio. For those of you attending meetings, you have your meeting schedules in your folders. Please reach out to me at the conclusion of the morning session. I will be off to this side of the room. If you have questions about your meetings, if something in your schedule has changed, please let me know and I can help coordinate and make that a successful day for you. You have supplemental information about your meetings too. Frequently asked questions, what to do if you're asked this question, how to frame this issue. All of that is in your materials and has been prepared for you. For our wonderful folks who are joining us for the morning and who have made the trip to travel and be here with us for this morning session, but are not able to join in the afternoon, thank you so much for being here. It is so important to have you here to listen to our wonderful speakers and to show up and show the support for sexual violence survivors in Ohio. There is also information in your folders for you about how to carry this movement forward, how to contact your legislators, even if you are not attending meetings today. You can still call, email, tweet, tag your lawmakers on social media and get in contact with them. So we encourage you, even if you're not meeting with them today, to please reach out to them to talk about these important issues and issues that come up throughout this General Assembly that impact survivors of sexual violence. Remember that your elected officials are here to work for you. That is one thing that most of you have heard me say many times before. They are here to represent you. And so please remember as you go forth today to frame your issues that you are a constituent of these lawmakers. They represent you, your neighbors, the survivors that you serve. And that is a great starting point for your meetings. That is all that I have for you today, but we have our wonderful CEO and President, Rosa Beltre, who is going to close us out this morning. Thank you.
It's a joke, but I do need the stool. Buenos dias. Good morning. What an honor. Thank you so much for being here today. Woo! What a week. What a year. So the issue that you will actually be describing today will be pertaining specifically to our line item. But the fact that you are here today, it's an actual visualization of the power that we have as a collective. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So as we bring this powerful day to a close, I want to pause, take a deep breath. Can you take a deep breath with me? Exhale. Thank you. I would like for OASV staff also to stand. While you are meeting with legislators and their aides, this is the staff that represents you at a statewide level. So thank you. To ensure that we get this work done, if I could have the regional leaders and directors that are here with us today, we are missing a few, but please stand. Thank you. So each region has a leader. If I could have the past and present board members that are with us today, please stand. Today we are celebrating our 13th annual Advocacy Day, and I have been a part for 12 years of OAESV and Advocacy Day. And to be honest, today is one of the deepest and heaviest day of Advocacy Day for me as executive director and just as an advocate, as a constituent, hearing and leaning entre las vainas que pasan en este país. In a country, in a nation where wants to invisibilize, wants to silence us again. But I want to thank you for being here in this moment, in this fight, in this sacred space of collective advocacy. Whether this is your first time joining us or your 13th, your presence does matter. Your voice matters. Your courage to stand in hard truth and speak up, that is what makes you a voice of change. We find ourselves in times unlike any other. Let's name it. That is the elephant in the room. It is not about, oh, we've done this before, we are resilient. No, this is heavy. I am exhausted. It is scary. I feel you. Da miedo, y es verdad. And we are all experimenting vicarious trauma in a different way. The political climate we're navigating, it is not just difficult, it is hostile. Hostile to bodily autonomy, hostile to truth tellers, hostile to survivors, hostile to equity and justice. And for those of us who live at the intersection of multiple identities, who are Black, Brown, Indigenous, LGBTQI+, immigrant, disabled, our threats are even more dangerous, more intimate, more urgent. Every day brings something new. Every day we lose sleep. This is not business as usual. This is not asking for funding just to keep our jobs or to continue to do this work. This is survival. And yet, here we are, still standing, still fighting, still believing, still advocating. And we do so not just in words, but in action. We advocate, we prevent, we prosecute, we protect, we counsel, we heal, we hold space, we create safety. Every system that had failed to do so, that is what we do as the Voices of Change in Ohio. This April, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we come together not just to raise awareness, but to demand accountability, visibility, to be heard, to honor the lives impacted by sexual violence, to hold up a mirror to a society that too often looks away from survivors, and to say with one voice, no more. No more silence, no more erasure, no more system, no more harm, no more invisibility, no more. Because the truth is that change is not going to come from the top down. It never has. It never will. Change comes from the village. You and I are the village. Change starts with us. We are the advocates showing up at the courtrooms, at the campuses, at the hospitals, at the high schools, at the elementary schools. We are the preventionists shifting culture and planting seeds of consent, of respect, of equity. We are the nurses offering gentle hands in moments of crisis. We are law enforcement officers who believe survivors from the first moment they report and walk with integrity. We are the prosecutors who fight for justice and dignity in broken systems. We are the counselors, the healers, the educators, the organizers. We are the ones scrambling for funding. We are the ones waking up every day believing survivors. We are the community that refuses to give up. The work we do not only is needed, and it is not glamorous, it is not paid enough, it is often unseen, it is underfunded, but it is essential. You are essential to this work, and it is impactful. The numbers sometimes don't say all of the work that we do, but it's not about the quantitative data. It is about the qualitative data. It is about the storytelling. It is about the impact that you do every day. It is about the opportunity that we have to allow survivors to get up another day, to confront, to live another day. Every life you touch, every policy that we change, every survivor who finds their voice again, that is the impact of this work. And so I say to you, remember your why. Why you chose this work. Why you lose sleep over it. Why you keep coming back even when it's hard. Why? Because your why is your anchor. And your why is your superpower. And as we leave here today, as you meet with lawmakers and their aides, I don't want you to just walk in and leave the space inspired. I want you to walk away activated with a deep understanding that this work cannot wait, that these meetings you're about to have, they're not just items on a schedule. They are the opportunities to plant truth in the ears of those that carry so much power. So go boldly, speak plainly, lead with fire and compassion, because the world is watching and the world is in desperate need of each and every one of you in this village. Yes, you and I are the voices of change. Not somebody, not someday, not when it's easier, not when it's okay, not when it's a different person in government, but right now in Ohio, in our communities, in our systems, in our lives. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for staying in the fight. Thank you for being the village. Now, let's go ahead and kick some behind and do it boldly. I appreciate you all. Thank you for coming to Advocacy Day. You are the village. You are the voices of change. Gracias. Before we head out, there is some lunch available for you. If you need to go ahead and be at your meetings, please try to be there at least 15 to 10 minutes before. before we actually go ahead and dismantle social media, and also the power of our collective being is so important. So we're going to ask you all to stand. We're going to try to accommodate so we could take a picture, because in the 13 years, today also is the biggest group that we have had. Go, let's do this, Taylor. So it's coming from above. Good morning, everyone.
Amazing, thank you. Thank you.